Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Hey, this is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this episode of The Business Side of Music. Today we have in the studio, we have Jeff Leisowitz. Now, this was an interesting introduction brought to me, I think, through his publicist. Found out that he's not only a award-winning musician and producer, which, by the way, I went online and checked your music out. Very good. But is also a college instructor, critically acclaimed author, and internationally distributed filmmaker, which I want to get into in a little bit of that. Has written a book. And this is a very interesting title. If you were here in the studio and you could see Jeff and I talking to each other, I've held it up once. The title of the book is Not Effing Around, and I love the asterisk, it's in the perfect place. Not Effing Around, the No Bullshit Guide for Getting Your Creative Dreams Off the Ground. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Hell yeah. Thank you, sir. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you here. So, okay, let's talk a little bit. As I said, you're an award-winning musician and a producer, college instructor, an author. Why this book?
Why this book? This book came to me. I was not trying to write it. It sort of wrote itself through my magic fingers, I guess. One day, a couple of years ago, I went to the coffee shop on a Saturday morning, as I often do.
Well, a lot of us do, that's right.
And, I had some time and I was just doing some writing. So sometimes I'll write some poetry or work on a screenplay or do some journaling or, who knows what, just something. It was one particular day, I just started writing. I didn't know what it was, but it turned out to be my NFA, not effing around, philosophy. So when I was done with a couple hours of this, I was just sitting there and I read it and I'm like, you know what? This is actually, this is bigger than I thought it was. This could be a book. Because really what the book does with me and for me and through me is it takes one side of myself, which is the creative, the musician, the producer, the filmmaker, the writer, all that stuff, and then it marries the other side, which is someone who's always been into empowering others. So as a college teacher, I teach college students to write songs. Amazing. I have practiced NLP, which is something called, stands for neuro-linguistic repatterning. It's a one-on-one counseling to help people untangle their subconscious blocks. I've also practiced life coaching. I'm a life coach. So I'm big on helping people get out of their own way, find their truth, and kick some ass. So I put these two things together, basically unconsciously, and bam, I had a chapter. And then I was like, maybe I should write a book. So there it was.
Well, and you're touching on a subject that I think is perfect for the creative person anyway, because and I consider myself a creative person to a certain extent, and your chapters that you go through. First of all, it's not a heavy read, it's not a deep read. It's got some good movement, travel to it. You can get through it pretty quick, but I think what I find with most artists is we have that left brain, right brain, and the creative side is at least for many that I've talked to, it's a lot of kind of mumbo jumbo, and they've got a lot of great ideas, but they don't know how to kind of clear through that and to find that finite moment that could really be something great. And then on the other side of the brain, you don't know what to do with it, and so hopefully this book helps you to kind of, hey, stop effing around and let's get going.
Let's get going, man.
So I told you as we were chatting for the show started, I printed something out of your book, which I hope you don't mind, and stuck it on my refrigerator, and I want to read it to the listeners. I think this is cool. It says, "Believe it or not, your conscious mind doesn't know everything." Boy, that's an understatement, at least for me. In fact, it's really good at some stuff, really lousy at other stuff. When your conscious mind drops into your monkey mind. I love that. Chattering away in circles, not really going anywhere. The truth gets obscured. I mean, was that kind of like an epiphany moment for you, or is that something that was just kind of learning? How did that come about?
Well, I have been, a sort of somewhat introverted, intuitive type really my whole adult life. Asking myself questions, looking around at the world, as everyone does, certainly. But after a while, I realized, through my experience and through reading various things, that it really is different kinds of consciousness, right? Your mind really is good at stuff. Like, it will keep you from walking in front of the bus. It will, be able to navigate through time. It will help you figure out complex logical or even simple logical questions or challenges. But that's kind of all it's really good at, right? There are other kinds of consciousness, and the other big one in my book is the heart, right? So you've got the head and the heart, right? We've heard this for a million years. Well, we often get so caught up in the brain, in the mind, that we don't really access the heart and honor it. And the heart knows a lot of different things than the mind. So by tapping into your truth, by really feeling what really drives you, what's passionate in your heart, it's a whole, you will understand the world in a different way, and you will make different decisions about the world. Because really our lives come down to, what decisions do we make? What actions do we take? And if they're all coming from the brain, you will have that experience in your life. They're all brain, But if you make choices based on pieces of your heart, your life is going to change, and it will be a more heartfelt, more soulful life. This is kind of the bottom line.
And let's talk about that for a moment, because honestly, I don't think most songwriters, which is what we deal with a lot on this show, I don't think most songwriters write that it song, that big song, that special aha moment song, based on their brainwaves. They're writing about it from what's coming from, whether it's that gut feeling or that heart-wrenching experience or whatever, and that's what they need to follow.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. I mean, there are plenty of hit songs that are consciously manufactured, and we all know what they sound like and how long they last and what they do.
Yeah, what we call a one-hit wonder.
Right, sure.
Yeah.
And then you've got the real songs and the real music and the music that is created from the heart and performed also with that. And any half-conscious listener out there can tell the difference. Right?
Oh, I think so. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. Did this song blast through my mind, through my heart, through my body, and really resonate with me? Or is this kind of just some little ear candy that's going to be disappearing, an hour later or a week later?
Yeah, and not leave that permanent footprint in your psyche, because it's just not a great piece of work.
Mm-hmm. And I've got another thought on that one too. I tell this to my college students, my songwriter college students. So there is a time for the logical brain part, right? And then there's the time for the heart part. So I look at, great example for me, Jimmy Page, okay? This guy knows how to play guitar, right?
Just a little bit, yeah.
So he studied this, he learned it, he knows it. That's great, intellectually, right? And then you look at one of these 70s videos, concert videos of Zeppelin playing, and that guy is not thinking about what he's playing, right? He is feeling what he's playing. So he learned it so well that he forgot it so he could feel it. And that, I believe, is the key to really top level creativity.
And I think that's what separates so many really good musicians from the rest of them. I mean, you could take his name out and put in Terry Kath from Chicago, or Jimi Hendrix, or Carlos Santana, Peter Gabriel. Yeah, they stop thinking and they start feeling, and that's what you're talking about here.
Yeah, And, you know, it's interesting because I see some music students that I deal with where they're really good players. Like, they can really play that guitar or keyboard or whatever, but they can't seem to access, or they haven't, you know, yet accessed the heart part of it. So they're playing from their mind rather than from their heart. And in a sense, there's nothing wrong with that too. I mean, that's a style of music and whatever. You know, it's a different kind of vibe, classical music maybe, or something. But, you know, the music that really works, it's about emotion, right? That's what really hits us. That's what music's about.
I want to talk about that. We're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back. Here in the studio today, Jeff Leisowitz, who is the award-winning author, who has written the book, Not Effing Around, the No Bullshit Guide for Getting Your Creative Dreams Off the Ground. We're going to talk about getting those dreams off the ground. This is Bob Bender, and you're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
This is Corey from World Music Nashville, and you are listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hi, this is Vinny Rebus, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag, that's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to the business side of music.
We're back in the studio with Jeff Leisowitz, author of the book No Effing Around, the No Bullshit Guide for Getting Your Creative Dreams Off the Ground. You know, I think it's actually your first chapter after the intro, you talk about discovering what you love and why. And it's immediately followed up with declare your dream. I think, you know, a perfect testament is to anybody who gets the opportunity to follow the family business, and maybe it's a law firm or real estate or accounting or whatever, and it's set in stone. I mean, it's a perfect thing, but their heart's tugging at them to go in a different direction. And there's nothing wrong with discovering what it is that you love and why, and then following it, is there?
Of course not. You know, this life gives us all different challenges, certainly, you know, from our family systems to economics to all kinds of other things, right? Our histories, our various talents and skills. But I believe that it is important to find your truth and to act upon it, right? And perhaps that truth is keeping the family business going, and that's great if that's what it is for you. But if it's not, then it does behoove you to like really think about who you are, what you want, and then my big question is always why, right? Because why will always drill down deeper into the next level that drives the action and drives your desire. And the more you ask why, the more you will understand yourself and, you know, why you want to move forward with this. Like if you want to be a songwriter or a musician and it's to be rich and famous, that the rich and famous is like it's like the byproduct of doing it well.
But if that's the reason you're doing it for the wrong reason.
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's the byproduct.
Yeah.
If you're, you know, if perhaps your message or your driver is to express yourself or to, you know, connect with other audiences that have similar issues or similar ideas or things like this, that's a much bigger mission. So one of the things that I've come to realize recently is that creativity at its core is actually an act of service to the world. At its core. So, I mean, it gets, you know, obscured by, you know, a million different ways in the business and with, you know, you throw the money and the glitz and glamour and all that stuff in it. But at its core, you are, being a creative, you are one, being seen in the world, being healed by your own creativity, right? And being expressed as the person that you are. And then by giving that away, whether it's to, millions of people all over the world, or to your girlfriend or your boyfriend as a, one song, it is an act of service. It connects us. It makes us feel more understood, feel more seen. And on the other side, as the consumer, let's just say consumer, the recipient of the music, it adds an element that is really quite profound. Like, imagine this world without any movies, books, TV shows, music, right? What's actually left? What are we going to do? We're going to run around and work and eat and sleep and try to amuse ourselves somehow. The music that we create, when we connect with someone, we are giving them something of ourselves in a way that can't be done otherwise.
And I think, to take it maybe even a step further, if you want to make an impact, and people say, well, I want to be successful, make a lot of money, make a name for myself. You create that embodiment of work, and it gets out there. It's a permanent footprint that can never be erased. I mean, it may impact somebody tomorrow, like you said, a loved one or a family member or a friend, or I was listening to Peter Gabriel's album "So," which is one of my favorites, and I've probably listened to it.
Right.
I've probably listened to it like 100 times.
Yes.
And the other day, and it was just playing in the background, and I don't even remember what I was doing, but it was playing in the background, and "Don't Give Up" came on. Now, I've heard that song, I could almost sing it if I'd actually listened to the lyrics.
Right.
But something clicked, and I listened to the lyrics, and I went, wow. That, I mean, it literally moved me to the core, and I got to figure out, why did he write this, and did the research on it, and you don't know what you do creativity wise, how it's going to affect people 5 years, 10 years. I mean, that album came out in 1980 something, and 30 years later plus, it's still impacting people, at least me. So I don't give up on that dream.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And it's beautiful, because as a musician or creator of any kind, you know that it gets out there, but you don't always feel the reverberation back to you. Yeah. And so it almost has to be, in some ways, a selfless gift, right? It's a gift to the world, because people are going to copy it and you never know what's going to happen. But then every once in a while, something's going to come back to Peter Gabriel, or the guy around the corner who's writing a song, or, like you said to me earlier, you printed out that page and stuck it on the refrigerator. I fucking love that. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it made an impact. It definitely made an impact. And it caught me at the right time. When I read your book, and then I said to my wife, I'm going to print this out and put it on the fridge. And we got to stare at this thing once a day, because it's perfect. Let's move on a little bit. I love this one chapter, Time Travel with Your Future Self. Don't we wish we could all do that?
Do it, man. We can do it.
Talk a little bit about that.
Okay, so you can take this, my next little monologue here at different levels, right? So on one level, we can visualize who we want to become, right? And we can add energy and skills and ideas to that. And that's just, that's pretty street level, pretty solid. And science has actually proved that this is an effective tool. You can, people who will visualize, like literally just sit there, close their eyes and visualize shooting foul shots for an hour. Right?
Without ever picking up a ball.
Without ever picking up a ball, or, maybe they're a basketball player, but whatever. They're visualizing it is actually nearly as effective as practicing for that amount of time. Okay, so think about that. That's an extraordinarily powerful tool that we can use in our minds. So for musicians, maybe you don't care about foul shots, But you can care, or you possibly do care, about playing some riff or creating a song that is, up-leveled to where you're at or whatever. Simply by thinking about this and visualizing it, and especially adding emotion to it, will inform this literally in your brain, and then it will, become manifest on some level. So this is a great tool, and I talk about it in the book, and I do it in my workshops and all that kind of stuff. It is really a powerful tool to help you create a future. Now, here's where it gets a little weird. I actually believe that you are sending energy into your future self, because as we kind of know, we have a conception of time, but anybody who thinks about it, every human kind of is like, time is a little bit weird. It never really is the future, is it?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know the mysteries of the universe, but, by putting energy in, we can cull information and wisdom, both from our future selves and from other people. I think I talk about this in the book, who are high level, right? So one of the exercises I do in the workshops is, okay, think of someone who's really good at something that you want to be or do, right? But it's not you, it's somebody else. It's a great guitar player. Okay, and this is all in the meditation, right? Eyes closed, deep in meditation. Notice what they are doing and have done to get that, right? So an obvious one, of course, is going to be like, well, they actually practice, the guitar. But not only do they practice, they set time to practice every night from 7 to 8:30. I'm going to practice that freaking guitar 5 nights a week. Okay, so that's some pretty good information that you already knew.
Right. That's just common sense.
Right, but it's common sense, but we forget it, right? We know a lot, but that doesn't mean we act on it. So by doing these kinds of exercises, you can also draw in other ideas that you may or may not be aware of that can help you, excel in whatever you're trying to do.
We're going to take a short break, but before we do, I want to, once again, that piece of paper that I printed out and put it on our fridge, there's more to it. There's a couple more components, and this covers it perfectly. It says, that's why you need to find a quiet place, a quiet room, a quiet walk, a quiet mind. Breathe, feel, don't think. Pull that thing you love into your heart. That's exactly what this is.
Absolutely. And I can't stress that part enough. This world is designed to distract you, right?
Oh, yeah.
All the advertising and now the cell phones and the internet. You have to consciously work against the mechanisms of the world to get that quiet space. And it is so key in tapping into your truth and moving forward with a sort of stillness and peace in your heart. Because again, you can try to muscle through all this shit and you'll get somewhere.
Right.
But that does not mean you're going to be having a good time doing it.
No, and it's going to be twice. It's almost like pulling something uphill, Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is Bob Bender. We're in the studio with Jeff Leisowitz, the author of Not Effing Around, the No Bullshit Guide for Getting Your Creative Dreams Off the Ground. You're listening to this edition of The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
Hey, this is Bob Bender in the studio today with Jeff Leisowitz, author of Not Effing Around, on this edition of The Business Side of Music. This is the No Bullshit Guide for Getting Your Creative Dreams Off the Ground. And I got to tell you, dealing with a lot of artists when I consult for them, that's, you have to kind of just, get out there and let it hang sometimes. And one of your chapters, this was interesting. It says, say yes and blank. And I think a little bit of that has to be, you as the creative person, whether you're that singer, songwriter, guitarist, keyboardist, manager, producer, whatever it is, you have to fill in those blanks in order to be able to move forward. It eventually solely relies on your creativity.
Absolutely.
So that chapter, and sort of part of what I'm talking about in there, comes from something that I learned in taking an improv comedy class a couple years ago.
How did that go?
It was good.
You talk about that in your book, I believe, if I remember correctly.
So, in improv comedy, one of the tenets of how to do improv comedy is you must first accept the reality that the other actors are giving to you. Okay, so that's the yes part. Say yes. This is the reality. And then you have to add to it, meaning say yes and blank. So in improv comedy, if, the other actors, you're sitting there with a couple other actors and they say, okay, so here we are, sitting at the bus stop and the alien comes down and wants to eat your head. Okay, the first thing, right, it's like, it's like the Blondie song, Rapture, right? So the first thing you have to do as the actor is realize, okay, this is the reality. And the second question is, well, do I pull out my ray gun? Do I start kissing him? Who knows? It's up to you. You're the improv actor. So this works for improv acting, but it also works big time for life, right? So the first part that a lot of people seem to skip or misunderstand is the say yes, which is basically accepting reality. What is your actual situation? Like, step back, not the way you want it to be, right? Not the way you think it's going to be in 5 years, but what is it in this moment?
Yeah, what is that real, true reality?
Right. And it's difficult because we all live in our subjective, in our subjective selves. So this can get a little bit blurred. But as you step back and become more conscious and maybe go into that quiet place to look at this, that's the first part. You understand where you are, who you are, what your skills are, what your experiences are, all that kind of stuff. The next part is, and what are you going to do about it? Right? What's next? What value can you add to the reality that is there for you and in the direction that you want to go? Because really, you can make choices for anything at any moment. You could theoretically hop on a plane to Costa Rica and never come back to America tonight, right? You could do it. Might not be a great idea.
Especially now with the hurricanes coming through.
Right, yeah, don't go to the hurricane zone, sorry. But what I'm getting at is our choices really are huge. So by knowing where you want to go, by understanding your reality, and then taking actual steps towards it, you are now creating your life. And again, like what we talked about before, there's the logical side and there's the heart side. So the heart might be, yes, let's go to Costa Rica. Okay? In this question, well, the mind might be like, well, maybe we should wait for the hurricane to pass. So, again, I'm not dissing on everybody's gray matter. It's just, it's the balance, really.
Well, and I think you've logic plays a certain extent no matter what. But, one of your chapters, in fact, talks about play it unsafe. And we do have to take a leap of faith. We have to get out there and, there's a lot of people that will say and point fingers and go, well, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that. When, once again, maybe your brain is telling you, well, maybe they're right, but your heart and your gut are saying, what are you afraid of? Go do it. And I think, sometimes we do have to play it unsafe. In order to achieve that moment or those moments of fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm. And it depends where you are in your life, how much risk you are willing to take, right? How are other people depending on you, various things. When you're 20 years old and you want to play in a rock band and tour the country in a van, really, there's not that much to lose. The risk of it, it's just like, well, we might end up sleeping in the van once in a while.
Or every night.
Or every night.
Been there, done that.
If you're, decades later, a 50-year-old guy or something, and you've got the wife and kids or the husband and kids, and,
Still trying to live the dream.
Still trying to live the dream, you have to, consider that reality. Like, is it worth the risk? Or how much risk? So, in filmmaking, so I'm a filmmaker, right? A lot of filmmakers out there will think of, okay, maybe to make my film, I should get all these credit cards. You've heard this story, right? They get like all these credit cards and they max out, $300,000 to pay to make their movie.
Right.
Okay, that's a pretty big risk because that's a pretty big risk. However, you do not have to go that far to take a risk to move forward. What if you want to make a short film? Maybe you only need $5,000 or $10,000 for that, right? And even if it goes completely belly up, you'll recover, right? You'll deal with it. You'll pay the debt and you'll move on.
And hopefully, to a certain extent, you have learned some things to help you make choices down the road. So maybe you can make that 10, 15, 30-minute short or a feature, because now you've learned just by going through some might be, in some cases, painful movements or motions, but hopefully you've learned. And yeah, maybe you are 50 years old now and you got a wife and 3 kids and 2 dogs and, mortgage payment, a couple car payments, but you can still live that dream. You have to kind of focus in on what it really is.
Right. Focus on the love, focus on what you really want and why, right? Because making it big is not always making it better. If you can play a gig,
thank you.
Right? I mean, that's what America believes. Bigger is better, bigger is better, bigger is better.
Better is better.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I've seen, like a year or two ago, I saw the singer Gillette Johnson. So she was playing a small gig, maybe 30 people. And she just came off a tour opening up for somebody, I forgot who it was, in front of thousands. Like, I think it was arenas. Like, it was a big deal, right, coming off a thing. And she's playing this small show. In the middle of the show, she just stops. And she says, you know what? This gig is better for me than the big shows. Because you guys are right here. I am talking and singing to you. You're 10 feet away. There's no giant lights in my eyes. The sound isn't too crazy. It's just us connecting. Getting back to the core of what music is. It's that service of giving to, whoever wants to listen, whoever's receptive to that. So that was a huge moment for me to hear her say that. Because, a lot of musicians, I think probably most musicians, they want it bigger. Bigger, bigger, bigger.
Well, and you just hit on something. And my wife, the other night, she loves documentary films, I'm finding out after all these years. And she came across this film about these 2 guys, and the movie's called The Minimalists. And it's exactly what you just talked about. These guys, they wrote a book, they got in their car, and they drove across country to promote their book. Most of these bookshops that they would go into, these book signings, quote unquote, there'd be 20, 30 people there when they started. What happened was as the word got out, as things progressed, as news traveled down the road, they started going into these book signings and finding out there weren't enough seats. In fact, in one instance in Las Vegas, they had to move the book signing outside because the facility they had inside was not big enough. So, that tells me stay the course. You may start out small, you may remain small, but baby steps, but don't give up on that dream. Do you agree?
I absolutely agree. So I'm not dissing on making things better.
Or bigger.
Bigger, right.
Because when you do this, you touch more people, right? However, things change as it gets bigger. There's more stress, really.
Yeah.
I'm sure all the artists you work with will tell you that. And it, like the singer I was telling you about, depersonalizes it. You can't touch somebody in a room of 30,000 people like you can in a small club, like you can in a living room.
We produced a TV show a couple years ago, and we shot it in a theater that, first of all, was only 100 seats. And, most of the episodes that we shot, there would be 20 or 30, maybe 40 people in the audience. And it was a little unnerving at first for the songwriter until they figured out the intimacy of it. And they said the exact same thing you said. Man, this is one of the best shows I've ever done. I was so able to relate and interact with the audience. So yeah, don't always think bigger is better.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
This is Bob Bender. We're in the studio with Jeff Leisowitz, who wrote the book, Not Effing Around, the No Bullshit Guide for Getting Your Creative Dreams Off the Ground. You're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to the business side of music. Next up, the Indie Artist Spotlight, brought to you by Reverb Nation.
Would I've already decided to forget? Oh, but don't tell me when.
Hi, this is Shaylee. I'm from Chicago and I'm part of Reverb Nation. I play a lot of contemporary acoustic singer-songwriter music. It's kind of all in there. I play a lot of open mic venues right now, smaller coffee shop places, which I really enjoy because I get to meet people and share my music as I write it, which is nice, and promote the music that's already out. I released my first EP, We All Need to Go Places. I'm really proud of it. I wrote, played, and recorded it all in my living room. So it was a project kind of centered around self-reliance and doing things on my own and discovering things that I could do on my own. So that was really special. And it's 4 songs. Most of them are about navigating what it means to want to go somewhere without really knowing how to get there yet. And that's kind of why it's called We All Need to Go Places. You can check out my music and some videos on my website, which is shaylee.com. That's spelled SHEALEIGH.com. And you can find me on Reverb Nation /Shaylee, SHEALEIGH. Here's an excerpt of my current single, The Party.
I'm not the same as I was when we met. You are what I've already decided to forget. Oh, but don't tell me when you leave that the party is dead. You said please don't go and leave me alone, and I thought I let you down. But you're not my fault, and I don't need to talk to know you.
This is Shaylee, and I'm part of Reverb Nation.
I'm not the same.
You're listening to the business side of music.
This is Bob Bender with our guest, Jeff Leisowitz, in the studio. He's written the book, Not Effing Around, the No Bullshit Guide for Getting Your Creative Dreams Off the Ground. Every single, well, I'm just not going to limit it to artists, songwriters, musicians, aspiring directors, producers need to read this. How do they go about finding it?
The best way to find me is the website, jeffleisowitz.com. I could spell that for you, but you'll forget. So maybe, Bob, you can pop that on your website or something. The book is also available on Amazon and everywhere else. It's an ebook, print book, and also an audiobook if you're into that.
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. It's good reading, and it is, like I said, it was inspiring enough that I printed out a page and stuck it on our fridge. So what's next for you?
Well, I've been doing all kinds of workshops and interview events actually here in Seattle where I'm based, and that's been going great. I am getting ready in October to launch the online NFA experience. So I've got a couple of different workshops coming. One is specifically for songwriters. So if you go to jeffleisowitz.com, you'll see that on there. You can get on the mailing list, all that kind of stuff. I'd love to have everybody in there. And, I'm looking for, just like my students at school, all kinds of different, instruments, all kinds of different styles, genres. We can learn from each other. And that's a huge part of the thing.
Do you think there's another book in you?
Oh, yeah.
You figured out what that one's going to be yet?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because the whole thing is a creative process, right? I wrote this book relatively quickly, and I'm deep in it, and I love it, and I love spreading this message and helping people and all that kind of stuff. But as I'm doing these workshops, I'm realizing that pieces that were only hinted at in the book are actually stuff that I want to talk about more. So this bit about, creativity is service to the world, how creativity heals you, all this kind of stuff. I definitely talk about it in the book, but it's a little bit subtle. It's not quite as, it's not the main message. So I think the next book is going to be more about like, what is the real power of creativity for yourself and for the world around you? And I'm psyched to write it.
I can't wait to read it.
Yeah.
They can follow you on Twitter, of course, and that's at NFA Jeff, correct?
Yep.
And for all of our listeners, if you want to find him, he is at Jeff, JEFFLEISAWITZ.com. I wholeheartedly recommend get this book, read it. You're gonna be glad you did. It's gonna inspire you. It's gonna help you make things happen in your life and in your career. Jeff, thanks for being on the show.
Hey, thanks a ton. I really great talking to you.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender for Bob Bender Productions. Co-producer for the show is Vinny Rivas. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.